My name is Nancy Trent, and I'm 28 years old. If you grow up as the spare daughter, you learn the choreography of being useful before you ever learn the taste of being loved. Your name becomes a doorbell people lean on. Nancy, can you fix the sink? Nancy, can you drive Riley to the airport? Nancy, can you spot us till Friday? Friday never came. Riley, my older sister, was the golden child with a paper crown. If she blew rent money on one last blackjack hand, my parents called it a phase. When I got a D+ in 8th grade algebra, they called it a warning sign. Riley wrecked 2 cars by 21. I wasn't allowed to drive until I was 20. Riley dropped out after 1 semester and got a trip to Vegas to clear her head. I graduated top of my trade program and got a pair of clearance socks and a lecture about humility. Grandpa Dean was the one person who looked straight at me and saw the whole picture. He taught me to rebuild an engine at 16, the two of us elbow deep in grease while a dusty radio crooned faded rock. He'd hand me a wrench like he was passing down a compass. When he died, I didn't expect applause. I also didn't expect the letter. The will reading wasn't cinematic. No mahogany room, just Mr. Silverman in an office that smelled like lemon cleaner and old paper. Dean wanted to leave something just for you, he said, sliding a manila envelope across the desk. Not much, but yours, no one else's. Inside, a check for $13,852.771. Not a miracle for most people. For me, someone who'd bartered appliance repairs for rent and lived on bulk coffee and off-brand noodles, it was a safety net folded into a love note. A week after the funeral, my mother's handwriting arrived like weather. You know your sister is going through a hard time. She made a mistake. We're asking you to do the right thing. You were always the reliable one. Guilt in cursive. I could practically smell the perfume of manipulation. Do it because you're good. Translation. You can afford to be used. I didn't reply. I deposited the check, bought professional-grade tools, and replaced my coughing van with a used workhorse whose air conditioning whined but held. I sublet a 1-car garage in an alley that smelled like motor oil and tacos and taped flyers at bus stops. Wrench and redemption, yes, corny, yes, mine. My boyfriend, Noah, laughed when he saw the name. Redemption is good branding, he said. People love a comeback, especially their car. He brought me deli sandwiches on long days and kept his advice short. Write everything down, keep receipts, lock your phone. That last part wasn't random. When I was 18, Dad had slid a form across the kitchen table, utilities, rushing me to sign before I ran to my shift. I barely read it. Back then, I thought signatures were just rubber stamps on obedience. Noah didn't know that story, but he understood my family with eerie accuracy. He'd once met my ex-girlfriend Sierra at a friend's party and clocked the way Sierra said, "Your family needs you," like an indictment. Sierra and I are long over. She's just a cautionary echo in a different hallway now. The first call came from Dad, his voice sheathed and calm, the kind you use for skittish animals and disobedient daughters. Your mother told me about the money. We need to talk. We need 2 words that meant you give. Your sister's in a bind. Some people are asking questions. He paused. Since you're not using it yet. I ended the call. No speech, no storm, just a clean click. Then I blocked his number. The next morning, a group text. Mom, 11:02 a.m. We can't believe how selfish you're being. Dad, 11:05 a.m. Family sticks together. Always has. Me, 11:08 a.m. Delete my number if it's only worth $13,000. I left the chat and went back to the garage. Oil change, brake pads, a radiator that hissed like an angry cat. Word spread faster than I could sleep. The girl who shows up on time, who explains things without condescension, who charges what's fair. By month 2, I was booked solid, still living lean, but the ground under me finally felt like ground. That's when the guilt campaign scaled operations. Voicemails stacked like junk mail. Mom, she's your sister, Nancy. Your sister. They always said it like a prayer, as if the title erased the ledger of damage. Aunt Marina. Your father hasn't slept. Do you want to see your family fall apart over a few thousand? Cousin Jess. You're different now. Money changed you. I saved every message, not to gloat, as receipts. because in my family the truth needs witnesses. Riley never texted me directly. That was her art form. Let others do the begging and the bleeding, then arrive at the curtain call for applause. But when she did appear, it was on Instagram. A boomerang at a casino bar, back on my grind, smiley face, and clinking glasses. I watched it 3 times, not because I doubted what I saw, but because disbelief sometimes wears your face. A few days later, a guy named Jimmy, 2 oil changes in and loyal for life, mentioned he'd seen my parents' address on a local contractor forum. Repo chatter, he said, stirring gas station coffee, might be nothing, but a black sedan, washer-dryer, pending pickup. I laughed hard enough to drop a wrench on my boot. My parents loved their financed illusions. The couch that whispered 18.7% APR, the smart fridge that updated strangers about kale inventory, the car that said we're fine while the bank statement screamed. That night, Dad left a voicemail that would have been funny if it hadn't been my life. You're being cruel, Nancy. Your sister didn't ask to be like this. As if entitlement were a weather pattern Riley got caught in. As if I were the storm. Noah listened with me on the shop step, our dinners balanced on our knees. They're tightening the screws, he said. Let them. Screws need to find wood or they spin forever. Week 3, a text from Riley, a number I didn't recognize until her style gave her away. Riley, they're talking about taking the house. I didn't think it would get this bad. Please. I stared until the screen dimmed. For a second, the old reflex flexed. Fix it. Be the good one. Carry the weight. Then I remembered the hospital bill I begged help for at 22, $600, and a lecture on resilience. I put the phone face down and finished installing a water heater for a widow named Ruth, who paid in cash and banana bread. She told me I reminded her of her grandson. I almost cried over aluminum foil. The repos started like thunder you pretend isn't thunder. My cousin Sarah texted a photo, a flatbed hauling off a black sedan. Mom stood arms crossed, beside a man in a yellow vest. Dad stared like blinking could stop reality. In the background, a voice on speaker, Riley, insisting it wasn't her fault. I watched the clip 3 times and felt nothing. No schadenfreude, just a click in my chest, a switch sealing shut. They called the next morning. Dad, 8:41 a.m. Can we talk? It's serious. Mom, 8:43 a.m. Men took the TV. Said more is coming, please. Riley, 8:51 a.m. If you ever love me, don't let them take Mom's piano. That piano, the shrine I wasn't allowed to touch growing up. The instrument transported across 3 houses for Riley's recitals while I was told, that's not your thing, Nancy. Now it was my job to save it. I didn't reply. I tightened a serpentine belt and thought about the word help, how it can be a life raft or a leash, depending on who says it and why. 2 days later, my parents arrived, unannounced. Beige SUV, rolling into my alley like a ghost from a better decade. I was elbow deep in a carburetor when Mom said my name like it had splinters. Nancy. The sunglasses told me she'd been crying, or wanted me to believe it. Dad looked smaller, as if the repo man had taken inches of him on the way out. We need to talk, he said. No, I said, calmly wiping my hands on a rag. You need to talk. I have work. They stood in the silence of oil stains and humming fans, choosing their angle like gamblers pick tables. Mom started with contrition. We made mistakes, but we're still your parents. You are, I said, meeting Dad's eyes. Just not my dependents. He bristled. We raised you. You raised Riley. I didn't blink. I raised myself. For a long breath, nobody moved. Outside, a motorcycle coughed to life. Inside, the past finally ran out of credit. We're losing the house, Mom said. Riley's in trouble. Collectors are calling the landline. I asked one question. Did you co-sign anything for her? Their silence was a confession written in bold. I walked to my desk, and their faces lit up like they smelled money. I handed them 2 business cards instead, a debt settlement lawyer and a post-repo furniture outlet. I can give you resources, I said. I won't give you cash. Mom didn't take the cards. Dad's jaw clenched like a stripped bolt. They left without goodbye, hauling their pride like luggage they couldn't afford to check. After closing, I sat on the shop step with Noah, watching evening turn the alley copper. 2 new reviews pinged my phone. On time, honest. Fixed what the dealership couldn't. Somewhere across town, a couch was being unbolted from its pedestal life. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt steady. Noah bumped my shoulder. You did the right thing. I did the hard thing, I said. I'm not sure those are the same. He looked at me the way Grandpa used to hand me a wrench, like he believed I could. In your family, he said, hard is the only way right gets paid. I saved the last voicemail of the night under a new folder, emotional gymnastics. Then I locked the shop, checked the van, and, out of habit, looked at the old, scarred place inside me where obedience used to live. Quiet at last. In the morning, the phone would ring again. It always did. But now my hands had work to do, and work is louder than begging when you let it be. By the time spring melted the frost off the alley, wrench and redemption had turned from a gamble into a rhythm. I was waking up before sunrise, hands already thinking ahead, what needed tightening, what needed rebuilding. The garage smelled like engine oil, stale coffee, and something else, freedom. But every voicemail, every message that landed after dark was a rope trying to pull me back. It started small. Aunt Marina again, the family's self-appointed diplomat. Nancy, sweetie, don't hold grudges. Riley just needs time to get back on her feet. Your parents are heartbroken. Can't you help with a payment or two? Then came Dad's calm threat voice. We all make mistakes, Nancy. You think you're better than family now? And finally, Mom's crescendo. Grandpa would be ashamed of what you're doing. That money was meant to help, not divide. Divide. That word sat like a nail in my throat, as if unity meant everyone leaning on the same person until she cracked. Noah watched me scroll through the voicemails one night while we ate takeout on the hood of my van. You don't owe them silence, he said. You owe yourself peace. I wanted to believe that. But peace felt expensive, and my family was good at running up tabs. A week later, I heard Riley's name again, this time through gossip, not guilt. My old coworker Tamara texted, Saw your sis in Atlantic City last night. VIP lounge. Looked fine to me. She attached a picture. Riley in a glittering dress. A drink raised mid-toast, captioned, Lucky Streak. Lucky. That's what they called it when she fell upward through every mistake. When I fell, they called it poor planning. The next morning, a new voicemail arrived, this one sharp-edged with panic. Mom, 6:32 a.m. They're calling about the car again. Said if we don't make the payment today, they'll tow it by noon. Nancy, please, just this once. You can't watch your parents lose everything. I didn't answer. I watched the clock instead. Noon came. The tow truck did too. By evening, Sarah texted me another photo. Same driveway, different heartbreak. Guess it's real this time. The picture showed my parents' black sedan loaded on a flatbed, wheels tied down, Mom with her arms crossed tight, Dad blinking through shame, trying to pretend it was just maintenance. And behind them, on speakerphone, Riley's voice carried, This isn't even my fault. I stared at the photo until my eyes blurred. Then I saved it to a folder labeled Documentation. Because I knew this wouldn't be the end. Families like mine didn't collapse cleanly. They dragged everyone down for company. Days later, Dad called again, voice trembling. You think this is funny? We're drowning, and you're standing on the shore laughing. I'm not laughing, I said, keeping my tone level. I'm working. He ignored it. Do you even understand how serious this is? The mortgage, the taxes, everything's collapsing. If you had any decency... Stop! I said it quietly, but it hit like a slammed door. You mean if I had no boundaries? That's not decency, Dad. That's dependency. He hung up. For once, the silence felt heavier than his voice. That night, the neighbors filmed the second repo. A couch and a television this time. 2 men hauling it down the driveway, Mom yelling something about personal property, Dad pacing like he could intimidate debt collectors with nostalgia. A 47-second clip, blurry, vertical, shaky, but you could see everything. The suburban perfection peeling away. I replayed it 3 times, not out of cruelty, but disbelief. For so long they'd treated me like the embarrassing footnote, the girl with grease under her nails, the one who settled for a trade instead of a degree. And now they were the ones losing furniture on camera while I built a business out of scraps. Noah saw the clip over my shoulder. Poetic, huh? Painful, I said. Poetic would have been if they'd learned something. 3 days later, Riley texted again from another burner number. You win, okay? Everything's gone. Mom's losing it. Dad's talking about selling the house. Please, I just need a little help to make it right. That word again, help. I almost laughed. I thought of all the times I'd begged for a little help. Gas money, textbooks, a small loan when I broke my collarbone and couldn't work, And the answer had always been the same. You're strong, Nancy. You'll bounce back. Now they were the ones collapsing, and I'd finally learned how to stand still and watch. The guilt campaign didn't end there, it just rebranded. Mom's voicemails turned sorrowful, less fury and more performance. He's really sorry, Nancy. Riley didn't mean for this to spiral. You've always been the strong one. Please don't harden your heart. I saved that one too, because when people start flattering your strength, it's usually right before they try to use it against you. The following weekend, Noah and I sat outside the garage under the flicker of a cheap bug light. He was sketching out a new logo on the back of a receipt, something simple, a wrench forming the letter R. You ever think they'll stop calling? He asked. They'll stop, I said, when they run out of things to lose. 2 mornings later, I found out they already had. Sarah sent another text, this one without commentary, just a still frame from her neighbor's security cam. 2 men carrying a baby grand piano down the walkway, the one that once defined our family's worth, the one I wasn't allowed to touch because you'll smudge the keys, Nancy. Now it was being wheeled away by strangers in steel-toed boots. That night, Mom left one last voicemail that made my skin crawl. I hope you're happy. I hope your little business is worth it. You've let this family fall apart. Grandpa would be ashamed of you. I played it twice, then saved it in the same folder as the others, retitled Emotional Gymnastics 101. I didn't respond. Instead, I cleaned my tools, locked up, and stared at the photo of Grandpa Dean on the pegboard. He was smiling in that quiet way, like he knew the future would test me. Maybe he'd left that money not to save me, but to teach me what not to buy into. The next day, they showed up again. I was under a hood when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Beige SUV. Faded baby on board sticker. Mom's sunglasses again. Dad's hunched shoulders. Same scene. New level of desperation. We need to talk, he said. I told you before, I replied, wiping grease from my palms. You need to talk. I need to work. Mom's voice cracked. We're losing the house, Nancy. The bank's threatening to take it any day now. Please, you don't understand what it's like. I do, I said softly, because I was there. I just didn't have a house to lose back then. Dad stepped forward, his voice rising. We made sacrifices for you. I met his eyes. No, you made sacrifices of me. The silence that followed was heavy enough to bend metal. Finally, I picked up 2 business cards from my desk, the same ones as before, and handed them over again. One's a debt lawyer, the other sells affordable used furniture. That's all I've got. Mom looked at the cards, then at me, like she was seeing a stranger. Maybe she was. They left without another word. That night, I closed up shop, turned off the lights, and sat in the quiet glow of my phone screen. 2 new reviews had come in, 5 stars each. Honest, fair, and kind. Fixed what the dealership couldn't. Outside, somewhere across town, another truck engine rumbled to life. Another possession loaded into the past. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled and whispered, let them learn the cost. Because this time I wasn't paying it. I wish I could say that after that night, the calls stopped, that they finally accepted my silence as an answer. But guilt doesn't die quietly in families like mine. It mutates. For the next few weeks, my phone became a graveyard of missed calls. Unknown number, private caller, no ID. I didn't answer a single one, but I could feel the storm circling again. And storms, in my family, always come disguised as apologies. It was a Thursday afternoon when it happened, the ambush. The garage door was halfway open, sunlight slicing through the dust. I was mid-oil change on a customer's pickup when I heard Noah's voice from outside. Nancy, you've got visitors. I looked up, wiping sweat and grease from my brow, and froze. There they were, my parents, standing at the mouth of my alley like they'd walked straight out of 2008. Mom in oversized sunglasses, clutching her purse like it contained moral authority. Dad with his hands in his pockets, posture folded, voice rehearsed. We need to talk, he said again, as if the repetition might change the meaning. No, I said, my voice steady. You need to talk. I'm listening. They hesitated, thrown off by the reversal. For years, I'd been the one begging to be heard. Now, the silence belonged to me. Mom went first, of course. We made mistakes, she said, her tone trembling at all the right places. But we're still your parents. I glanced up, meeting her hidden eyes. You are, but that doesn't make me your retirement plan. Dad stiffened. You're being cruel. You don't understand what we're going through. I understand perfectly, I said. I just stopped volunteering for it. That line landed like a wrench dropped on tile. Clean, sharp, irreversible. They played their final card then, the one they always saved for the endgame. "We're losing the house, Nancy," Mom said. "Riley's collectors. They're threatening to come after us next." I didn't flinch. "Did you co-sign anything for her?" The silence was its own confession. "I thought so," I said, turning back to my tools. "Then maybe this isn't my fire to put out." Dad's jaw flexed, that same stubborn twitch he used when bills arrived in red ink. "After everything we've done for you." "You mean everything you've taken," I said softly. I walked over to my desk and pulled out 2 cards, one for Eli, the debt lawyer who still owed me a favor, and one for Alder's secondhand home, a post-repo furniture outlet I did HVAC work for. "I can't fix Riley," I said, handing the cards over, "but I can recommend people who don't enable her." Mom looked at them like I'd handed her sand instead of salvation. She didn't take them. She just turned away, lips trembling behind the sunglasses. Dad muttered something that sounded like ungrateful before they disappeared down the alley. The air they left behind smelled like old perfume and burned bridges. That night, Noah and I sat on the step outside the garage, watching the sky bruise into twilight. He handed me a bottle of cold soda. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," I said. "Just tired of being the designated disappointment." He smiled faintly, then stopped playing the role. I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. He was right. Later that week, I got a text from Sarah again. Just a single message. "Saw something you might want to know." Attached was a video clip, 47 seconds, grainy, vertical. My parents' driveway, 2 men hauling furniture down the steps, Mom shouting, Dad pacing. A faint voice on speaker. "Riley." "This isn't my fault!" It felt surreal, like watching a rerun of a life I'd already canceled. I didn't feel glee, not even relief, just a deep, empty quiet, because this was what happened when lies run out of things to stand on. The next morning, Mom's final voicemail arrived. Her voice was trembling, brittle, a performance fraying at the edges. "I hope you're happy, Nancy. I hope your little business is worth it. You've let this family fall apart. Grandpa would be ashamed of you." There it was again, Grandpa's name as a weapon. The man who'd left me the only gift he could, used like ammunition against me. I replayed her words 3 times, then forwarded the voicemail to myself and renamed the file. Emotional Gymnastics 101. Noah heard it too, shaking his head. "They're still trying to make you feel smaller, even from a collapse." "Yeah," I said quietly, "but the echo's getting weaker." A week later, things took an unexpected turn. I was finishing a brake job when a rusted delivery van pulled into the alley, license plate half fallen off. Out stepped Riley. She looked wrecked. Hollow eyes, chipped nails, hair in a knot that screamed days without sleep. But even then, she still tried to smile. "Hey," she said, voice shaking. "Didn't think you'd actually see me again." I didn't move. "What do you want, Riley?" "Not money," she said quickly, hands raised. "Just help." There it was, the word that had poisoned every relationship I'd ever had. Help. She told me about couch surfing, maxed out cards, men she owed and couldn't pay. Her voice cracked only once, when she said she didn't even have a place to sleep that night. I should have felt pity. Instead, I felt exhaustion. "Come with me," I said finally, and she followed me to the side of the shop. There, behind the dumpsters and scrap bins, sat a battered blue van I'd been meaning to scrap, a customer's junker I'd hauled off for parts. "It's got no engine," I said, "but the inside's clean. There's a cot. You can stay in it for now." She blinked, stunned. "You serious?" "Dead serious." She laughed, and for the first time in years, it sounded real. "Thanks, Nancy." "Don't thank me," I said. "Just don't touch anything that's not yours." That night, I checked on the van before locking up. Riley was inside, curled up with a blanket I'd left. For once, she wasn't on her phone, wasn't spinning excuses, just breathing. Noah joined me, resting his arm around my shoulder. "You think she'll stay?" he asked. I said, "She's run out of places to run." The next morning she was still there, sweeping the alley, quiet. It didn't erase the years. It didn't heal the damage. But it did something I never thought I'd see. Riley humbled. And that, somehow, was the beginning of the real reckoning. Because when people who've never faced consequence finally do, the truth doesn't just surface. It detonates. 3 weeks after Riley started sleeping in the van behind my shop, I finally felt like I could breathe again. The garage was busy, the bills were paid, and the nights were quiet. Riley kept to herself, helped sweep, even ran for coffee once or twice. For the first time in forever, I didn't wake up to panic. Until the call came. It was 9:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. The number looked official, some local area code I didn't recognize. Ms. Trent, this is Kelly from First National Mortgage Services. I'm calling regarding a property on Briar Lane. Does that sound familiar? My heart stuttered. That was my parents' address. I think you have the wrong person, I said slowly. I don't own that property. There was a pause, the sound of keyboard clicks. Our records show you're a co-signer on the refinance agreement filed 12 years ago. We're noticing irregular payments and potential default risk. We just need to verify your details. I nearly dropped the wrench in my hand. 12 years ago, I was 18. And then it hit me. The utilities form. The one my dad shoved across the table before I left for my evening shift. Sign this, Nancy. It's just for the electric bill. It wasn't. It was the house, the refinance, the debt. And my name was on it. I hung up and sat down on the shop floor. My palms were slick, my heartbeat mechanical. Riley peeked out from the van, sensing something was off. You okay? Yeah, I said, forcing calm I didn't feel. Just some paperwork mess. The moment she went back inside, I called Eli, the debt lawyer who once paid me in gratitude instead of cash. He answered on the second ring. Nancy, you still saving my furnace from 20T? I'm calling in that favor. When I told him what happened, he whistled low. They forged your co-signature for a refinance? That's criminal, Nancy. Send me everything. I scanned the email copies the bank forwarded. When Eli opened them, I could hear him flipping pages over the line. They even faked the notary. Unbelievable. We're not just disputing this, we're nuking it. I'll file a fraud report and freeze the account immediately. By Thursday, the mortgage went into special investigation hold. That meant the house couldn't be foreclosed on or sold until the fraud case closed. But it didn't stop the collectors. And now that they couldn't touch the property, they went for everything else. Within days, the repo trucks came like vultures. The TV, the washer, the car, even Mom's precious baby grand piano, hauled away in broad daylight. Riley stood by the alley gate, watching the clip someone had sent to her. Her voice was small when she said, "They're losing everything." "Good," I said, sharper than I meant to. "They took my name. Let them see what it costs." That night, my dad called using Riley's old burner number. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity, my oldest weakness, won. "Nancy," he said, breathless, furious, "you froze our house." "No," I said calmly. "I froze a lie." "You don't understand. We were drowning." "You dragged me under with you." "You stole from us." I laughed, quiet, short. "No, Dad, you forged me." He fell silent, the kind of silence where you can hear the collapse. "They're taking everything," he whispered. "Then maybe next time," I said, "read what you're signing." And I hung up. The next morning, I stepped outside and found Riley sitting on the bumper of the van, sipping instant coffee from a chipped mug I'd left her. "They took the last chair," she said softly. I leaned against the door frame. "They'll come for the walls next." She gave a weak laugh. "Guess that's one way to do open concept living." For a second, we both smiled. Then she added, "I'm sorry, Nancy, for all of it." I wanted to tell her forgiveness wasn't on my inventory list, but something in her eyes looked real this time. Not performative, not self-pity, just tired. "Don't apologize," I said finally. "Just stop pretending it wasn't your fault." She nodded, eyes wet. "I already did." That weekend, Riley started helping at the shop. Nothing big. Handing me tools, cleaning parts, folding towels. She wasn't good at it, but she tried. Noah noticed the change too. "She's quieter," he said one evening. "She's broke," I replied. "That's the quietest state of all." But there was something different in the air. The fight was over. The reckoning had arrived. A week later, a letter came from the bank. Final verification. Fraud case ongoing. Property on Briar Lane. Under investigation. Legal responsibility. Frozen. I set it down on my desk, the words vibrating in my chest. Frozen. For the first time in 12 years, the weight of my family's debt wasn't on my shoulders. I didn't cry. I didn't cheer. I just stood in the middle of my small, oil-stained empire and felt something new. Freedom. That night, I found Riley behind the shop, sketching a map of her next steps. Cheap apartment listings, part-time jobs, a scribbled note that said, "Maybe volunteer at the shelter?" I asked, "You sure you're ready for that?" She nodded. "You were right. I've spent my whole life betting with money that wasn't mine." For the first time, I believed her. When I went to lock up, I looked back at the van, the same one that once symbolized everything I hated, failure, chaos, collapse, was now a quiet monument to boundaries. Because sometimes the only home you can save is the one you build inside yourself. It was early morning. So early the sky still wore the color of metal, when I walked into the shop and saw Riley already awake. She was sitting on the bumper of that same rusted van, coffee mug in hand, steam curling around her face like she was slowly thawing from years of denial. She didn't say good morning. She didn't need to. For the first time, silence between us didn't feel like tension. It felt like peace. By the end of that week, I got another call from Eli, the lawyer. His tone was bright, almost smug. "Nancy, congratulations. The investigation's wrapped. The bank confirmed the documents were forged. You're cleared, completely. The mortgage is no longer attached to you." Cleared. One word. 12 years of weight falling off in an instant. Eli kept talking. Something about civil options, restitution, but I barely heard him. My brain was too busy replaying all the times I'd signed my name in that house, thinking it meant loyalty, not leverage. "What happens to the property?" I asked when my voice finally caught up. "Auction," he said. "The house will be sold to settle their debts. It's out of your hands." I smiled faintly. That's the best place for it to be. That afternoon, as if on cue, my phone rang. Unknown number. No voicemail this time, just a single text. "Mom, we didn't know what your father signed. Please, we need somewhere to stay while we sort this out." I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back, "You can stay in the van behind my shop." 3 dots blinked, then stopped. Then came the reply. "You're joking." I wasn't. "You already stole my name, Mom. What's a mattress between family, right?" I hit send. Then I turned off my phone and went back to work. The following weekend, Noah dropped by the shop with breakfast sandwiches and that look he always wore when he sensed a chapter closing. "You look lighter," he said. "I feel like I just finished paying off an emotional mortgage," I replied. He laughed, then glanced toward the alley. "She's still there?" "Yeah," I said. "Riley's been helping on jobs." "She's different." "She's broke," I said. "That'll change anyone." But there was no bite in my tone. Because he was right. Riley was different. She wasn't performing penance. She was actually showing up. Quiet, steady, unglamorous. Sometimes she brought lunch for the crew. Sometimes she swept without being asked. She never talked about the old house again. One afternoon, after we closed, Riley handed me a folded piece of paper. "Got approved," she said. "Small apartment, month-to-month lease. Not great, but mine." I unfolded the page, a rental confirmation, cheap but clean. "You did that on your own?" I asked. She nodded. "You were right about one thing. Rock bottom isn't the end. It's the invoice." For a moment, I saw Grandpa Dean in her. The same humility, the same quiet understanding that consequence isn't cruelty. It's clarity. "Keep it up," I said. "And if you ever need help," she cut me off gently, "I'll earn it next time." The next morning, a new letter arrived. Official seal, my name alone on the envelope. I tore it open with steady hands. Subject, final confirmation, release of liability. It was over. No hidden debts, no forged chains, no signatures used against me. I stood in the center of my shop and stared at the paper until my vision blurred. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or relief, just an even stillness, like my soul had finally found the ground beneath it. Later that evening, I locked up and walked around to the back. The van sat under a streak of orange sunset, its metal sides catching the light like a faded mirror. Riley's belongings were gone. Just a folded blanket and a note taped to the dashboard. "Thank you for the roof when I didn't deserve one. I'll bring it back clean. Riley." I smiled. That was more than an apology. It was growth. Inside, Noah was updating the website. New client reviews flashed across the screen. "Fair price, honest work. Didn't talk down to me. Fixed what 3 other shops couldn't. Will use again." Wrench and Redemption wasn't just a name anymore. It was a life I'd built from the ashes of obligation. Noah looked up at me. "You realize this is just the start, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, but for once it's my start." He smiled, kissed my forehead, and went back to typing. That night, I sat behind the shop with a beer, the same spot where I'd first given Riley that van. The alley was quiet except for the hum of distant traffic. For years, I thought freedom would come from being forgiven, or being seen, or even being thanked. But sitting there, I realized something simpler. Freedom isn't about getting even. It's about getting out. Some debts are financial, others are emotional, and the hardest ones to pay off are the ones you never agreed to owe. Now, they were losing the house they built on lies, and I was standing in the home I'd built on truth. When dawn came, I unlocked the garage, flipped on the lights, and whispered to myself, "Time to work." Because work, I'd learned, is louder than guilt, and peace isn't inherited, it's earned.